topic of today's lecture is the peptic ulcer disease. So first of all, we will discuss the common sites for peptic ulcer, which are the common sites where the peptic ulcers most commonly occurs. That is the first part of duodenum. It is the most commonest site, lesser curvature of stomach, lower end of esophagus, and Meckel's diverticulum, and stoma following the gastric surgery. We call it a stomal ulceration. Do you know what is the stoma? Stoma means opening, the mouth. When we do the anastomosis of the jejunum with the stomach after the gastric surgery, in case of carcinoma of stomach, we remove the distal portion of the stomach and we make the anastomosis of the jejunum with the stomach. So this is the stomal side. So sometimes the ulceration occurs over the stomal side, means at the anastomosis of the jejunum with the stomach, when we make a gastrojejunostomy, because the jejunum is more sensitive to the acids. So when the hydrochloric acid secreted from the stomach touches the surface of the jejunal end, then it causes the ulceration over the jejunal end. So this is called the stomal ulceration. Next. Now coming to the causes of the peptic ulceration. First of all, the increased secretion of hydrochloric acid in the stomach. As you all know, hydrochloric acid is the main secretion of the gastric secretion. In addition to hydrochloric acid, pepsin is another important enzyme which is secreted by the gastric mucosa, which is included in the gastric secretions, the pepsin. That's why the name is of this disease is the peptic ulcer. This peptic is derived from the pepsin, because pepsin is also a very important and the main enzyme of the stomach. That's why when the increased secretion of hydrochloric acid is there, there is also the increased secretion of the pepsin. Means pepsin and hydrochloric acid both are secreted in increased amounts. That is causing the peptic ulcer. That's why the name is the peptic ulcer. It is derived from the word pepsin. And increased secretion of hydrochloric acid is one of the commonest example is the gastrinoma. Gastrinoma is the tumor which is occurring around the or within the sea of the duodenum, and which is causing the more increased secretion of the gastrin. Gastrin is a hormone which is increases the secretions of the hydrochloric acid. We call it a Zollinger-Ellison syndrome as well. Other is the genetic factors. Ulcerative peptic ulcer disease is also a genetic disease, so that's why it is more commonly found in the blood group O patients because of the genetic predisposition. And other is the social stress. Some of the people who are living a very stressful life, they have the more chances of the peptic ulceration. As you all know, the H. pylori, which is a normal common cell of the stomach, it is also the causative agent for the gastric ulcer. And use of NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. Most of the elderly people are using very frequently the NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, like brufen, aspirin, disprin. They are using for the purpose of the pain, to get the relief of the pain. These are painkillers. So the elderly people, most of them are suffering from the osteoarthritis in elder age. So they are using frequently the NSAIDs. So NSAIDs has got the anti-inflammatory as well as the effect. So that's why this drug is also, if it is used for a prolonged time in excessive doses, it may cause the peptic ulceration. Cigarette smoking and alcohol intake is also the other common causative agents for the peptic ulceration. Extensive burns. The patients with the extensive burns or extensive trauma, they cause the stress ulceration. Because of the stress of the burns, stress of the polytrauma, the patient has caused the stress ulceration because of the increased secretion of hydrochloric acid in these stressful conditions. Next. Now coming to the types of the peptic ulcer, according to the duration of the disease, duration of the illness, They are divided into the acute peptic ulcer and the chronic peptic ulcer. The acute peptic ulcer is of the short duration and the acute onset. But the main difference and chronic peptic ulceration, which is persisting for a long time, more than a 6 months or 1 year's period, the disease is present and the duration is prolonged. But other now after investigating, we have to move forward for the treatment options of the peptic ulcer. Now, treatment is, you all know, initially the treatment of the peptic ulcer is the medical treatment because surgery has the role only in cases of complicated peptic ulcers. In uncomplicated peptic ulcers, the medical treatment is sufficient to heal the disease. As you all know, the medical treatment, first of all, the general measures. The dietary habits of the patient should be corrected. If the patient is smoker, smoking should be stopped. Patient is alcohol taker, alcohol should be stopped. If patient has a stressful life, we have to advise the patient to change his or her lifestyle. That is very important. So, as you know, the medical treatment. Change in patient's lifestyle is very important. We have to advise the patient to change his or her lifestyle. Another is the if he is a smoker, he should stop the smoking. If he is taking NSAIDs, NSAIDs should be stopped. Alcohol should be stopped. Stop spicy foods, and milk is advised to take, especially at the night. S2 receptor antagonist, as you don't know, in the old days, S2 receptor antagonists were used, but nowadays the newer drugs, proton pump inhibitors, omeprazole and esomeprazole and other newer drugs has the very important role. Sucralfate is also used. Antacids in the old days were also used. This is medical treatment, as you all know, is sufficient in cases of uncomplicated peptic ulcer because the medical treatment is sufficient to treat the disease. But in case of complicated surgical treatment, but the surgical treatment, as you all know, the surgical treatment nowadays the surgical treatment is only option in cases of complicated peptic ulcer. When the ulcer is complicated, when some complications is developed, or the medical treatment is failed. We have tried a medical treatment for years and it is failed, and disease is aggravating, and disease is not, the ulcer is not healing by the medical treatment, then we have to think about a surgical treatment. And other the surgical treatment is the more gold standard and nowadays recommended for the complicated peptic ulceration. The complicated complications, common complications are the bleeding peptic ulcer, perforation of the peptic ulcer, and gastric. If the peptic ulcer has developed the gastric outlet obstruction like the pyloric stenosis, then the surgery is the only option. The operations for duodenal ulcer, which operations are done? Bladder 2 gastrectomy. In bladder 2 gastrectomy, we remove the distal portion of the stomach. We remove the distal portion of the stomach and make the anastomosis of the remaining part of the body of the stomach with the jejunum. So, bladder 2 gastrectomy, we remove the distal portion of the stomach, antrum, and the pylorus, where there is the more chances of secretion of the hydrochloric acid. Other procedure is the gastrojejunostomy and vagotomy. Gastrojejunostomy is done means we are not just removing like the bladder 2 gastrectomy, we are not removing the distal portion of the stomach, we are just making the anastomosis, making a bypass procedure of the stomach with the jejunum. Because we are just diverting the food from stomach directly to the jejunum, bypassing the duodenum to prevent the duodenum from the insult of the hydrochloric acid, because the hydrochloric acid will then directly pass from the stomach into the jejunum, because we have make a bypass anastomosis, stomach with the jejunum, gastrojejunostomy. And vagotomy is done because vagus nerve is cut to reduce the secretion of the hydrochloric acid. Other procedure is a truncal vagotomy, means we have to cut the main trunk of the vagus nerve and make a drainage procedure. The drainage procedure are two types. One is the gastrojejunostomy, is again a drainage procedure, and another is the pyloroplasty, is the drainage procedure. This drainage procedure is done to prevent the gastric stasis, because we have cut the main trunk of the vagus nerve, then the motility or gastric emptying is delayed. The motility of stomach is delayed. So there will be the gastric stasis, stasis of food in the stomach for a long time. So we have to prevent it by making a drainage procedure. Drainage procedure is done by the pyloroplasty or the gastrojejunostomy. Other is the selective vagotomy and drainage, means we have to do the selective vagotomy. We have to cut the nerve supply of that area where there is the ulcer. If the ulcer is in the lesser curvature, we have to cut only the fibers of the vagus nerve which are supplying the lesser curvature. Highly selective vagotomy is especially done, very selective procedure for those areas where there is the ulcers. And another is the truncal vagotomy and antrectomy. We make the main trunk of the vagus nerve is cut and antrum of the stomach is removed. Resection of the antrum is done to decrease the secretion of the hydrochloric acid. And what are the operations for gastric ulcer? Billroth 1 gastrectomy is done, Billroth 2 gastrectomy is done. I am showing you the picture here of the Billroth 1 and Billroth 2. Then there is the vagotomy, pyloroplasty, and ulcer excision. This is also we are doing for the gastric ulcer. Vagotomy, we cut the vagus nerve, we do the pyloroplasty, and ulcer excision. The stomach portion of the stomach, where there is a very large ulcer, we have to excise that portion. I am showing you here some pictures. This is the number 1 picture showing you over the esophagus. You see at the lower end of the esophagus, that is the main trunk of the vagus nerve. What we do, anterior vagus nerve is, main trunk of the anterior vagus nerve is running on the lower end of the esophagus anteriorly. Posterior vagus nerve, posterior trunk of the main vagus nerve is passing on the posterior surface of the esophagus. So we cut the anterior trunk as well as the posterior trunk of the vagus nerve at the lower end of the esophagus. This is the truncal vagotomy. And here you see, this is the gastrojejunostomy, means stomach is making the anastomosis with the jejunum. So the food and hydrochloric acid will pass through the body of the stomach directly into the jejunum, bypassing the antrum and the first part of the duodenum. So prevent the passage of the hydrochloric acid, insult of the hydrochloric acid, duodenal mucosa. We are preventing the duodenal mucosa by the insult, by the action of the hydrochloric acid, because we are making here the bypass procedure. The hydrochloric acid in the food is passing from the stomach into the jejunum, not going towards the duodenum. Means we are just saving the duodenum. We are saving the duodenum from the action by the action of the hydrochloric acid. So this is the gastrojejunostomy bypass procedure. Here you see this is the Billroth 2 operation. This is the distal gastrectomy. Distal stomach is removed. Duodenum is closed. The first part of duodenum is closed, and we have made anastomosis of the jejunum with the stomach, gastrojejunostomy. So here the antrum is removed. Antrum and pylorus are removed. Distal part of the stomach is excised. So the food passing into the stomach from the body of the stomach, it is passing towards the jejunum. And duodenum, from the second part of the duodenum, bile and the pancreatic juice are reaching in the jejunum for the digestion of the food, which is entering into the jejunum. So here this is the gastrojejunostomy, and distal part of the stomach is removed. This is a Billroth 2 operation. If we remove the antrum, we remove the pylorus, so the secretion of the hydrochloric area for the secretion of hydrochlorous is decreased, and food is passing through the stomach into the jejunum. And duodenum, at the first part of the duodenum is closed. while the bile and the pancreatic juice passing into the second part of the duodenum is passing from here to the jejunum for the digestion purpose. The portion of the jejunum which we have made anastomosis with the stomach, this is the stoma. This is the stoma of the stomach with the jejunum. So here the only disadvantages is formation of the stomal ulceration, because the hydrochloric acid which is passing from the stomach into the jejunum also burns the mucosa of the jejunum, because jejunum is a very sensitive portion. It is not resistant to the hydrochloric acid. So the hydrochloric acid acts on the jejunal surface of the gastrojejunostomy, causing the ulceration over the jejunal end. So we call it a stomal ulceration here. In the last diagram, picture number 3, it is the Billerath 1 operation, which was then modified by the Billerath 2 operation. The Billerath 1 operation, what is the mechanism? Here you see the distal stomach is removed, distal gastrectomy is done, distal portion of the stomach, antrum and pylorus are removed. But here the anastomosis of the stomach is done with the first part of the duodenum. The anastomosis is between the gastroduodenal anastomosis. Gastroduodenal means the stomach is anastomosed with the first part of the duodenum after removing the antrum and the pylorus. So here the anastomosis is not made with the stomach and the jejunum, but stomach with the first part of the duodenum after removing the distal portion of the stomach. Means the antrum and the pylorus is removed. So initially in 1818, the Billerath was the surgeon who performed this operation, Billerath 1, in which he removed the distal portion of the stomach for the carcinoma of the distal part of the stomach. And he removed the antrum, pylorus, and make the anastomosis of the body of the stomach with the first part of duodenum. So this was the Billerath 1 operation, in which the anastomosis of the body of the stomach was done with the duodenum, means the gastroduodenal anastomosis. But later on, this operation was modified by Billerath, which is we call it the Billerath 2 operation, in which the distal stomach, diagram number 2, you see the diagram number 2 at the middle, the distal stomach is removed, the first part of duodenum is closed, anastomosis is made with the stomach with the jejunum. So this is a more successful operation as compared to the Billerath 1, has gotten the many advantages. It is easy to perform, while the duodenum anastomosis of duodenum, the stomach, is difficult to perform, and chances of dehiscence and leakage are more over this anastomosis as compared to the jejunum, because the anastomosis of the jejunum with the stomach is more easily performed, and the chances of healing are more, chances of leakage are less. So this anastomosis is more favorable. That's why now the Billerath 2 is most commonly recommended over the Billerath 1 operation. So it is called the more recommended operation nowadays, Billerath 2 operation, which is done in cases of the chronic peptic ulceration of the distal stomach, as well as it is done when there is the growth or the carcinoma of the distal stomach. Now here we are discussing the complications of the peptic ulcer. As I have told you, the peptic ulcer, a simple peptic ulcer without complications, is treated medically. The Whenever the complications is developed of peptic ulcer, the main important complications are three complications: the perforation, the bleeding, and the stenosis. So these are we call it the complicated peptic ulcer disease. The complicated peptic ulcer disease always requires the surgical treatment. When the perforation occurs in cases of peptic ulcer, the commonest site of the peptic ulcer is, or the first part of the duodenum. When the ulcer at the first part of the duodenum is converted into a chronic peptic ulceration, it will erode. It will penetrate deeper into the layers of the stomach. And most commonly, the perforation, which is occurring at the anterior surface of the first part of duodenum, it is more commonly perforated. And other, the gastric perforation, which is occurring at the pre-pyloric area, or pyloric area, or pre-pyloric area near the lesser curvature, has got the more chances of perforation. So these two are the commonest sites of the perforation of the peptic ulcer. Actually, the acute peptic ulcer involves the superficial layers of the mucosa. So, no chances of perforation in cases of acute. But when the peptic ulcer is converted into the chronic peptic ulcer, in which it is penetrating more deeper into the tissues and it becomes more eroding the layers of the stomach or the duodenum, then this chronic peptic ulcer will perforate. The sites of the perforation are more common in the anterior wall of the first part of the duodenum, the peripyloric area of the stomach, the pyloric area of the stomach, near the lesser curvature. These ulcers are more commonly perforated. And when the perforation of the stomach, the peptic ulcer perforation, the after perforation, what will happen? The hydrochloric acid, the juices of the stomach, and the food or water the patient is taking, that is leaking from that perforated area into the peritoneal cavity. So when this hydrochloric acid, then food particles, the water which is passing through that perforated peptic ulcer into the peritoneal cavity, that fluid, that food, that juices will irritate the peritoneum and the patient will develop a peritonitis. So that will develop a generalized peritonitis. The patient will present to you with the signs and symptoms of peritonitis. So when there is a perforated peptic ulcer, the patient will present to us with a peritonitis. What we do, we resuscitate the patient. Patient will be dehydrated. Patient will be in shock. Initially, we resuscitate the patient by IV fluids. Then we pass a nasogastric tube to decompress the stomach, and then later we have to prepare the patient for the laparotomy. On laparotomy, we find out there would be the bile, the gastric juices, the stomach contents of the food within the peritoneal cavity. So we have to do the peritoneal toilet, peritoneal lavage, washing of the peritoneum with the normal saline to remove all this food debris, to remove the hydrochloric acid and gastric juices, bile, which is entered through that perforated peptic ulcer into the peritoneal cavity. After doing the lavage, we find out where is the perforation. If it is in the first part of the duodenum, either it is the pre-pyloric area or the pyloric area of the stomach, we have to do the repair of that perforation. And the mechanism of repair of that perforation is the Grams omentopexy. Grams was the surgeon who did this procedure. What he was doing, he was applying a omental page. A portion of the omentum is over the perforated area, then we get the three sutures and we have to tie these three sutures above the omental page. Okay, so we seal that perforation by a portion of the omentum applying over that perforated area and getting three sutures through that omental page and applying a knotting over that omental page to prevent the chances of leakage from that perforated area. If we will directly apply a suture and tie it, the chances of cut through of these sutures are more. So that's why we seal this with the page of omentum. So this operation procedure is called the Grams omentopexy in cases of perforation. While the bleeding, second complication, bleeding peptic ulcer, we call the perforated peptic ulcer is one of the complicated form of the peptic ulcer. We label it the perforated peptic ulcer, other is the bleeding peptic ulcer. The bleeding ulcer commonly site, as I told you, is the posterior wall of the duodenum, because the ulceration over the posterior wall of the duodenum, when it becomes chronic and it penetrates deeper into the layers of the posterior wall of the duodenum, ultimately it will erode the posterior wall of the duodenum. And behind the first part of the posterior wall of the duodenum, there is passing a gastroduodenal artery, which is a large vessel artery. So it will erode the gastroduodenal artery. The gastroduodenal will start bleeding profusely within the lumen of the duodenum. So this bleeding ulcer, the patient will comes to you with a low blood pressure, the bradycardia, it will be in the hypovolemic shock, hemorrhagic shock. There will be the patient will present to us with a hematemesis, severe type of fresh bleeding, vomiting of fresh bleeding, and in these after resuscitation blood transfusion, what we do, we just go for the endoscopy. The endoscopy, the gastroenterologist will tell us the bleeding is coming from the first part of duodenum, because the commonest site is the first part of duodenum of peptic ulceration. So in this case, if Bleeding is minimal. It is controllable by the endoscopy. So the gastroenterologist is advised to hold the bleeder. If he is able to seal that bleeder through the endoscope, then it is the best option. But if it is not controlled by the endoscopic management of the bleeding, then we do an open laparotomy. We open up the abdomen. We open up the distal portion of the stomach along with the first part of the duodenum. On the long axis, we open up the pylorus as well as the first half of the duodenum. Then we find out there is a large, big ulcer with the bleeding vessel. So that bleeding vessel is ligated. We apply sutures, running and through running sutures over the bleeding point or the perforated side. So make the hemostasis secured. By Vicryl 2.0, we get the overrunning sutures over the perforated area of the posterior wall of the stomach. So we first of all, our aim is to apply a ligature, apply a running suturing over the bleeding area of the at the posterior wall of the first part of duodenum to control the bleeding of the gastroduodenal artery. Then we have to close the stomach and the first part of the duodenum. Okay, so this is the main management of the bleeding peptic ulcer. As you know, the stenosis. Stenosis is usually developed after the chronic peptic ulceration. After chronic peptic ulceration, there will be the fibrosis. There will be the fibrosis at the pylorus, at the first part of the duodenum. So that will give the stenosis of the pylorus. So pyloric stenosis is one of the complications of the chronic peptic ulceration. When pyloric stenosis is developed, first of all, there will be the management through the endoscope. Gastroenterologist by endoscopy tried the balloon dilatation. They just get a balloon, they are putting the balloon within the stenosed area and then they inflate the balloon. Inflate the balloon with the air, so that is the dilatation of the stenosed area. They are trying this, we call it the balloon dilatation. If it is successful, then it will give a results. But the chances of, in cases of balloon dilatation, there is the chances of perforation as well. One of the complications of that procedure. But it is not successful. Balloon dilatation is not successful. Stenosis is still there. The patients will develop the gastric outlet obstruction with a severe vomiting. As we have discussed in the previous lecture, the management of the surgical management of pyloric stenosis is one is the pyloroplasty, other is the gastrojejunostomy bypass procedure. We make just a gastrojejunostomy, making the anastomosis of the body of the stomach with the jejunum through a loop. I have shown you here the figure also, diagram also. So we make the anastomosis of the stomach, body of the stomach with the jejunum, making a gastrojejunostomy bypass to allow the passage of the food from the stomach into the jejunum. Other is the most major procedure, which is less commonly used in cases of pyloric stenosis, is the distal gastrectomy, Bellera 2. We remove the distal portion of the stomach, closing the body of the stomach and making the anastomosis of the body of the stomach with the jejunum. So we have already discussed the surgical management of pyloric stenosis. So this is all about the complicated and uncomplicated peptic ulcer disease, medical management, the surgical options, and we have covered this topic of the peptic ulcer disease. So especially we are concerned about the surgical management of the peptic ulcer disease. The medical management, you can discuss it in detail in the lecture of the medicine, but here we are concerned especially with the complicated peptic ulcer disease, the disease peptic ulcer which is complicated, the disease which is unrelieved, not treated by the medical treatment, the peptic ulcer disease which has developed the complications like perforation, bleeding, or stenosis. So always the complicated peptic ulcer is treated. Main difference between the acute peptic ulcer and the chronic peptic ulcer is that acute peptic ulcer involves the superficial layer of the stomach and the duodenum. Means there is the ulceration of the superficial mucosa of the stomach and the duodenum. While in case of chronic, if it is this acute peptic ulcer persists for a long time, there is the more deepening of the lesion. That acute peptic ulcer lesion is initially a superficial, affecting the superficial mucosa. Later on, it becomes deep. It becomes deep. It starts penetrating into the deep mucosa. It erodes the mucosa, so it will be more deeper. Deeper layers are involved in case of chronic peptic ulceration. Though the chronic peptic ulcer becomes more penetrating, more deeper, that's why it is the very shallow and very wide base. So that's why the chronic peptic ulceration has the more chances of perforation and the bleeding because it erodes deep in the deep tissues. And according to the site of the peptic ulcer divided into the gastric peptic ulcer and the duodenal peptic ulcer. The gastric ulcer, as you all know, the most important cause is the H. pylori and NSAIDs are the important factors, causative factors. And it is also associated with the smoking. But it is less common than the duodenal ulcer, but more common in the older age group. Usually, the duodenal ulcer is more common in incidence. It is gastric ulcer is less common, but in old age people, the gastric ulcer is more common. It is more common in the socio-economic group, low socio-economic groups. That's why it's a disease of the developing countries, while the duodenal ulcer is mostly found in the higher class. Higher class, so that's why it's a disease of the developed countries. And the size of the lesion, size of the ulcer is larger in gastric as compared to the duodenal ulcer. Chronic ulcers are more commonly found in the lesser curvature and they erode posteriorly into the pancreas, splenic, may involve the splenic artery and sometimes to the transverse colon. Actually, the malignancy is more common in gastric ulcer than duodenal ulcer. Means the chances of carcinoma are there in the gastric ulcer, while the duodenal ulcer is a benign disease. There are no chance of the malignancy transformation. So the duodenal ulcer peak incidence is now in a much older age group. Duodenal. Actually, the duodenal ulcer was commonly found in the more younger age group and more commonly in the males. But nowadays, the peak incidence is much found in the older age group, and it is again the same common in the men. Incidence of perforation and bleeding in duodenal ulcer in young and middle-aged patients appears to be falling. Now it is decreasing. The chances of perforation and bleeding in case of duodenal ulcer is now falling. Now it is decreasing. But again, it is more commonly or more marked in the elderly patients because elderly patients are using the NSAIDs more commonly. So the causes of the perforation or bleeding in elderly patients are because of the excessive use of the NSAIDs. Otherwise, the incidence of the perforation and bleeding in case of duodenal ulcer is decreasing nowadays. In chronic disease, the fibrosis causes deformity like pyloric stenosis. If this duodenal ulcer is converted into the chronic one, as you all know, in chronic inflammation, what is happening there? There is a fibrosis. There is a proliferation of the fibroblasts, so excessive fibroblast will cause the fibrosis. So that will cause the narrowing at the pylorus. We call it the pyloric stenosis. Sometimes ulcer is present on the anterior and posterior wall of the duodenum. When the ulcer is present on the anterior wall of the duodenum as well as on the posterior duodenum simultaneously, we call it kissing ulcers because both these ulcers on the anterior surface and posterior surface touch each other. Anterior duodenal ulcers tend to perforate. Mostly the perforation of the duodenal ulcer occurs on the ulcer which is present on the anterior surface of the duodenum. While the posterior duodenal ulcers, the chances of perforation are less, but chances of bleeding are there because at the posterior wall of the duodenum there is a large vessel which is running behind the posterior wall of the duodenum. We call it the gastroduodenal artery. There is a big vessel. So when this ulcer erodes the posterior wall of the duodenum, it also erodes the gastroduodenal artery. So then the gastroduodenal artery start bleeding into the lumen of the duodenum. So we call it a bleeding ulcer. This is one of the complications of the peptic ulcer. Other complication is the perforation. So two are the complications of the main complications of the ulcer. One is the perforation, other is the bleeding. and third one is the stenosis. As you all know, the malignancy is common in the gastric ulcer, but the malignancy is very rare in the duodenal ulcers. Now, how the patient will present to you with a peptic ulcer. The pain is an important complaint of the patient. The pain is intermittent and it is occurring in the epigastrium. It may radiate to the back. Eating sometimes relieves the discomfort. The patients with a duodenal ulcer, on when he or she is on the empty stomach complaining of the pain, but pain is relieved by taking some meals. Vomiting. Normally, vomiting is not present in the peptic ulcer, but it is increased due to pyloric stenosis. When there is the stenosis, gastric outlet obstruction, then there the vomiting may occur. Another complaint is the periodicity. Periodicity is a classical feature of the peptic ulcer. What is periodicity? Symptoms may disappear for weeks or months to return again. There is a certain period in which the symptoms disappear. So the symptoms may appear for weeks or months and they become disappear for few time. And then they return again. Due to spontaneous healing, the symptoms disappear. But they then again return back. So this mechanism is called the periodicity. It is a classical feature of the peptic ulcer disease. Alteration in weight loss, or sometimes the weight gain. Sometimes weight is lost, otherwise when the patient... Second? Let me tell you. The bleeding. Bleeding. Patients with gastric ulceration are often underweight. Bleeding, all peptic ulcers may bleed. Bleeding chronic leading to the anemia. Acute ulceration may present with the hematemesis and melena. What can we do? Yes. Now the investigations. In peptic ulcer disease, the investigations. In the old days, the barium meal X-ray was a very important investigation which was done, and it is a very cheap and simple investigation. But nowadays, endoscopy is the gold standard for the diagnosis of the peptic ulcer. The endoscopy, upper GI gastroscopy or the endoscopy is a very important investigation. The gastroenterologist during endoscopy will detect out the lesions, the sites of the ulcer lesions, as well as he will take the multiple biopsies from the different sites. So the chances of malignancy will be excluded. The biopsy will help us in two ways. First of all, we can get the biopsy for the H. pylori, as well as we can biopsy to exclude any malignancy from the stomach. So in this case, the biopsies are taken from the multiple sites to exclude the malignancy, and endoscopy will tell us about either this is a superficial ulceration or there is a deep ulceration. It is acute or chronic, and what is the size and site of the ulceration. Then we can decide about the mechanism of the treatment. And H. pylori, as you all know, H. pylori is important causative agent, and it is detected out by two ways: either the antigen in the stool, antigen in the stool is a very diagnostic, because the H. pylori is a normal common cell which is present in our stomach. So the H. pylori antigen will be found in the stools. This is a more gold standard investigation as compared to the antibodies of the H. pylori in the serum and the biopsies during the... Okay. So this is all about our lecture today. Have you any queries? Have you any questions? Please, you can ask. 91 attendance.